We're getting there.
We hope so. We hope so.
We just have to have B2.
Huh?
Just have to have B2.
Beetle.
B2. Right?
Second line, page Hey. In the middle of that line, it's saying, "V'shem shu b'idiyah v'chira," even as it is in the element, in the realm of idiyah and bechira, knowledge, divine knowledge, and then the human possibility of choice. Similarly, the similar phenomena, similar phenomenal union occurs. They have beetle in the beetle element. Shekol hanivroim b'teinim, but all the nivroim are bottle. We'll discuss it in a moment. Just want to start off. A bottle mitzad, they're bottle because of bechinas, the aspect of tziyur koima diak, of tziyur koima avak. Tziyur koima means the structure that contains, it's actually called ak is Adam Kadmi. Adam Kadmi means the pristine man, which means the beginning of creation. And in that beginning of creation is contained the entire creation. And then there is an aspect, a profound aspect of beetle. So let us step into the general gist of the discussion here. The principle that's being discussed, the broader principle. In general, we have a created world, and the created world is completely self-identifying, self-conscious, and identifies things on the basis of what world is. Losing the sense and the cognizance that world is not really world in inception. World did not conceptualize itself. World does not come from world. World comes from a divine level, principle. And therefore, since world comes from divine, therefore world should, you would think, have, excuse me, a divine spirit. After all, this is where it's coming from, and this is what sustains it. Excuse me. And yet, we already discussed, this is yesterday and days before, the principle of Bechira, that in the world, there is the element of Bechira. Bechira means totally free choice. Choice concocted or identified by the creature itself, by the world itself. I added this insert because when we say choice, we may be misunderstanding that choice means choice, selection. You're given a choice between certain things which are presented to you from above, from the Creator, and you can choose amongst them. That would not be an oddity at all. Of course, the Creator gives you all kinds of choices, and He provides you with the ability to make these choices. Bechira that we are talking about is that the the option in the choices are self-identified by the creature. They are put into the world. And they, by their relating and their experience in the world, they decide how they want to live. That's Bechira. In other words, they create the entire environment in which they live. This is an amazing thing. And the amazing thing of it is from two perspectives. Number one, the environment in which they are making these choices. It would be comparable to somebody coming to your home and making choices and setting things up according to the way they want. It's your home. So this is from the perspective of what they do in the world. The world has a creator and has a plan, and they come and they do their own thing. This is one level. And then there's another level where their path in life itself, not just the environment in which they perform, their path in life itself is is created by their own selection, their own identification. What is it? There's a creator in this world. Let me step back. That's just this created by their own identification would be at our level would be something similar to a child denying that he has parents. The child came to the world as a result of the parents giving birth. He denies that he has parents. It's kind of Bechira. This is a fundamental choice. He chooses, he lives in the world. Forget about where I come from. He relates to the world. This is the degree of choice that was provided for the creatures in the creation. This is the idea of Bechira. Hashem knows the creature. And this knowledge is what identifies and defines who he is and what his path in life, what he's living for, what he has come to the world for. And this knowledge provides him with his being, with his chayas, with his spirit, and both physical and spiritual. Despite that, this is where he draws his life. He can choose to completely ignore it and create his own defining element in his life. That's the idea of Bechira. And this we discussed already for several times. How is this possible? And we said what makes it possible is, and what this is pointing to, what this is revealing is that the divine knowledge of the creation is what's called Bechina's Havdalah. What is Bechina's Havdalah? Bechina's Havdalah means is at a perch, at a level that is a completely different realm than the one that is experienced in the creation. I've given already many different mishonim for this. Every time I start off and I say, maybe I'll present it a little bit different, maybe it'll hit home. And we'll see the wondrous in this. Human beings function on earth. They cannot budge, they cannot move without having the earth support. It's called friction. When you walk, you think you walk with your feet, but your feet are using the earth to propel themselves. If we walk on ice, they cannot walk. Why? Because ice doesn't provide the friction for us to push off from where we are. You can still move your legs, but it doesn't move. Because movement is a combination of two things: your action and the ground on which you're doing this action. If somebody denies that there is a ground, he won't be able to walk. In other words, nothing occurs independently of the entire reality. Thus, in a person's very fundamental experience of life, he already must recognize and include the environment in which he functions. Without that environment, we can make first step. As we said many times, I'm repeating it because of its profound meaning. We wake up in the morning and we look into the far horizon. So we look into nothing. We don't realize that this view of the horizon is what substantiates your view of the object in front of you. Not going to elaborate, but this is something which we already spoke about. Now, this idea, this knowledge, at the level of looking into the horizon, even though he said that this is what substantiates your practical knowledge of tangible objects. But that knowledge is at a different level completely than the practical knowledge on the physical level. That knowledge does not have any identifying marks. You look straight into the horizon. Doesn't say that it is you're looking up across 1,000 miles. There's no miles. There's no identifying marks. You're looking into an open horizon. This is a knowledge that's called Bechira Havdalah. You're looking from a different level where there are no marks. There's no mileage measurements there. When you travel, you walk, you count every step. And you accumulate your distance. When you look into the horizon, there is no distance. You don't cover ground. Because this is occurring, this is what the Rebbe is saying, at a level that's called Yidio Muvdelas Be'erech. I'm repeating this all the time. Mudaras be'erech. This is the words in the Maimon. The word be'erech means in comparison. It is muvdelas, it is separate, but not separate because it says the way you see it. But it's be'erech in terms of
estimation.
Excuse me?
Estimation.
Be'erech means estimation. Be'erech means in comparison. It's not a different kind of a experience completely. When you look things on Earth, every mile is an additional experience. But here there wasn't. It's not compared. It's not composed of miles. Not because you're bypassing the mile. It's not composed of miles. So a different viewpoint, a different sense of value, sense of reality. When we know things from that higher perch, from that higher perspective, nothing is affected. In the lower level is not affected at all. Like we said in our little example, you can observe thousands of miles, and you don't even sense that you covered miles because you're not looking at it and that from that perspective. You're seeing it from a higher perspective. You go straight to as far as your eye can see. This term, as far as your eye can see, is a very important term. And I want to discuss it for a moment. It's very real. Normally, we estimate things, we experience things on the basis of what there is, what we can experience, what there is in the path as we go, as we travel. There's a world, and there is an earth, and there is houses and trees and so forth. And we go through all that, we pass through all of that. Each thing that we encounter is another experience. Another tree, another house, another valley, another hill, and so forth. Everything is experienced. This is how the way it is when you experience, when you see things from a world beginning. The reason for that is because, in fact, there is an effort. The reason and the way you pass from one place to another is through a specific activity. You have to specifically go from here to here and from here to here. And there's a limit how far you can go. If your car runs out of gas, you're stuck. You can't go as far as you project, and you have to have all the means by which you go. But then when we have this completely different level of perception, sight, where the limit of sight doesn't even exist. There's nothing limiting your sight. The limit in the sight is how far you can see, which is limitless. That's a completely different experience. That experience of sight is what's called at a level that is moved on, that is devoid of any markings, of any limits, of any construction. When you see down 100 miles, you're not seeing 100 miles, 100 individual miles. You see one entity that extends as far as the eye can see. You're not accumulating miles as you are looking down. When you drive, you're accumulating miles. When you're looking, you're not accumulating miles. It goes straight, it goes above and above dollars on a higher level. You can observe everything on a higher level, where it's not put together from individual minds. This is what Mubdalas. At that level, when you perceive things at that level, all the things that in the middle, in the path, do not at all disrupt your view. To a point where you don't even notice them because you go straight to your target. This is the pshat in the idea. Hashem knows the world. Hashem knows the world from that level. This is why that knowledge does not in any way describe how people are going to behave on earth. Even though it is this knowledge that gives them the ability to behave, but it's from a person that does not at all relate to their behavior. This is what we discussed already, and now I'm just reiterating because we're going to the next step. This is called the idiom of deras be'erech. This is what be'erech means in context, in comparison. It is a completely different, and be'erech means in different, I forgot the word I used. It's out of proximity. It's out of proximity. That view is not composed of the miles that you cover. It's completely out of proximity from the experience of walking from place to place. It's in a higher spiritual experience. So the Rebbe says, this is why human beings have the ability and the freedom to make choices in their lives, even though they're created by the neighbors. So that creation, that creation should have had an impact on them of how they will conduct their lives. Because that's what gives them their life. And yet they can choose they from scratch just the way they want. Because that view, that divine view of their creation, of who they are, is at a higher, as other proximity of what happens on earth. I think, let me see. I want to give it, so to speak, a handle on this. What do you mean that Hashem sees the human being? Yes, a human being, but at the proximity of the human being's experience. We already have many Misholim, so we can use the experience that we already discussed. Yesterday, before we discussed the wealthy, the person giving tzedakah to the poor. He gives tzedakah to the poor. Normally, you say, "Oh, he's poor. He doesn't have money for breakfast, and I feel badly for him, so I'm going to give him money for breakfast." You are dealing with him at the lowest level of experience. He's hungry, so you're satisfying his hunger. So let's step away and see what it would be a higher perspective. He's hungry is an experience on earth. He feels the hunger and things. Let's take that off and go a step higher. As I mentioned before, the Gemara says that when a person travels, and the poor person travels, and you fed him, you have to give him something in his satchel, in his basket. He should carry food along with him. Why should he carry food along with him? He'll go to the next station, they'll give him food over there. The Gemara says, because one who has food in his bag has a different feeling than the one who doesn't have food in his bag, even though he's not going to eat it until he gets to the next station. What is the difference between the one who travels with food in his bag and one without food in his bag? So we discussed, one who travels without food in his bag, he is in a total loss. He doesn't feel that he is in the real world. There's no sense of support as he's traveling. This little bit of food that he has in his bag tells him that yes, the world is supporting him. Now, ultimately, his support does not come from this bag of food. His support comes from the fact that people have an obligation, a divine obligation, to give him support. The pasuk in the Torah. If somebody is needy, you have a divine obligation to go and support him, not because you feel badly for him. It's a divine obligation. That's a completely different level of orientation. Now, this poor person who is walking down the road and he is hungry, or he's potentially hungry, he does not sense this higher level, this obligation that you have to support him because he's the neighbor of the creation. He senses his own poverty, his own limits. The fact that he is assured from Hashem's support and so forth, that people will respond to them, that he doesn't sense. So therefore, this is there, but this support is on a different level that he does not give him reassurance. And so, but he carries this little food in his bag. How long is it going to last? This gives him more direct and the moment support more than the fact that he knows that he's going to get there. There is probably a tzedakah pusher over there, an organization. This is a shot that is moved to Be'erach. It's a perspective that is beyond that which the poor person experiences directly. So this is like a mashal to the Indian Kunyidim of those Be'erach. We here on earth, and we were created by the Meibush. And our whole Mitzias is the divine spirit that creates us. What to become aware of? The earthly challenges. We lose sight. Hey, you're on earth here on a mission from the Meibush, on the divine mission. What's going to be tomorrow? How am I going to pay rent tomorrow? Where are you? This perspective, this higher perspective, is a true perspective, but it's on a level that's moved over, that is beyond practical recognition on the person on his earthly experience. He has a little food in his bag that gives him more reassurance, more support than the fact that he lives in a society with people who are responsible to act according to Hashem's command. Because that's on a higher level. He doesn't experience it, he doesn't feel it. This is what we discussed till now. This is the Bechira. And now we put it in somewhat more practical respect. And then the Rebbe goes on and says, what's the limit of our time?
20.
20?
20, 25.
20 is over here.
Okay, so
Okay,
another,
just want to,
another 2 seconds.
one or a couple of minutes, okay. This is a transition, a different level of this same principle. This is why I always stop over here, because for this you have to be ready to step over. The idea of Bechira, we all recognize what that means, the Hashem's knowledge of the creation. And yet the human being has a choice how he behaves. And this is what we discussed just now. Then there is another realm completely. It's not completely, it's a similar but much higher. Let's say inside the second line from the Kufnut has. Exchange will be Bechira, just as it's true in the element, in the aspect of the Bechira. K'moi kein, similarly, likewise. Who? The similar inyan is repeated. Behabitul, in the beetle element. What is the beetle element? Shekol hanivroim b'tei. But all the creatures, entire creation, everything that's contained in the creation is bottle. Bottle means, we'll discuss bottle more, but just quickly, bottle means that they are non-entity. Why are they non-entities? They're creations. They're real creations. Because of the aspect of tzir komediak, of destruction of Adam Kadmon. Adam Kadmon means Adam Kadmon means pristine man. It essentially means the perception of the entire creation at the divine level. Everything that's in the creation in the world has been perceived by the Creator. The way the Creator perceives it is completely different than the creation senses itself, like we explained in the case of the poor person. The poor person feels the hunger. The person who is responsible, who observes it and helps him, does not go down to the hunger. He speaks from a divine perspective. What is my obligation in this world? What's my duty over here? It's completely not associated directly to the person who needs the help. You look at him as part of the whole world, not as an entity in himself. This is here from beetle. Beetle means the entire creation, everything that's in existence, is bottle, is none. What's meant is null, it's there, it's a whole creation. It is not an entity that identifies itself in terms of, I'm here, therefore I need such a thing. I'm here not because I'm here, but because there's a divine will that makes me be. And this divine will is more important than the fact that I have need. Just like we have the example. The mitzvah from the Torah to support the poor is more significant than the fact that he is hungry. It's more compelling. This is the beetle element. beetle means that it is completely united with the divine truth. And this is true regarding all the creatures. And yet, even though all the creatures are really bottom, there is one thing within divine truth, they don't sense it. Each one senses that he's an entity unto himself. Why don't they sense it? Because this divine truth views them from a higher, from a divine perspective rather than from a worldly perspective. That's why they don't sense it. Coming back to our example of the poor person, this pauper, he's hungry. You come to him, oh, you're hungry? Wait a second, Shonora says that I'm supposed to feed you. So I'm going to feed you because it's Shonora. That does not give him a feel himself, a feel of reassurance. Do you feel me? If you come to me and say, in Shonora it says that I should feed you, that's at a different level. That's your experience, not mine. So he is not reassured by this that you want to do what the Shonara says. He is much more reassured if you feel his pain. Although, in real truth, what's more reassuring? The fact that you have the divine obligation is much more powerful, much more demanding, and much more unlimited than the feel of the pain. Okay, try my best. All right. Got it?